We're back, y'all, with another episode of Café con Cheese. I'm Yaz.
And I'm Seb. And that's a little nod to the fact that Glitter, yes, Glitter, Mariah's soundtrack album is now available on Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere.
Hashtag justice for Glitter.
Justice for Glitter, goddammit. She got cursed with that album coming out on 9/11 in 2001. So
wow.
It's actually a really good... I mean, that came out wrong. But you know what I mean? Like, people called it a flop, and it's actually really good. Remember, it's like all that 80s kind of fun.
Oh, I remember. Thank you.
You're like, you played it all the time.
I'm like Jamaica Funk.
Oh, that's a good one.
I feel like Mariah, though, has like a history of really sampling like dope songs and actually making them dope, not like ruining them like, you know, some of our other faves. Like Christina or J-Lo.
That was a hard pill to swallow. Oof.
Well,
yes, Mariah is the queen of...
baby.
I will. Yeah, she is the queen of the sample. And anyway, but she was also she was like singing backup for that kind of music before she hit it big. Like, she was a backup singer in the 80s to like funk and R&B, that kind. So I think it's really dope. Anyway, for the generation that didn't grow up with it, you should go stream Glitter because it's actually really dope.
It's a cult classic.
It's a cult classic.
Just kidding.
It's a cult classic.
It's really not. Okay. So how are you doing this morning? This morning we were all in a flurry. We were in a tizzy. We forgot we were going to do this.
I know. She texted me and I was like... and like assembled all my things, and we had some technical issues getting set up, but we're here and we're ready and we're queer and we're...
I know. I woke up not in my bed, so I had to like scurry out, and I was telling Seb I felt like the episode of Gossip Girl. You know how like in rich TV shows they only take 2 berries out of like the whole plate of breakfast food? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, yes. I just felt like I was like, oh, I have to go, and took like a raspberry and ran out.
And just like you had your stuff like not even together, just like skirting out.
But like my hair and makeup was still okay. It was a TV show.
Little day-old makeup.
Stale.
I mean, but you weren't scurrying because it was a bad thing. You were scurrying because you were late to record.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I think scurrying out, it's because you're like, ooh, I made a mistake last night. I got to get out of here.
Oh, no. No.
You're like, not this time.
Not as of late, okay?
I know, I'm totally kidding.
It's different when you're getting like good loving, you know? Just... not even necessarily sexual, just like,
oh my.
You know?
No, I know what you mean. I was just trying to, keep the gag going for the children.
Yeah.
No, but I'm glad you're having good moments. And I hope you had more than a berry or 2 on your way out. Because I'm always like, if I would have been cooking a full-ass breakfast and the person was like, sorry, gotta go, with like a piece of toast in their mouth, I would have been like, fuck, like I just gave you eggs.
No, there was no breakfast. I was all in my head.
Oh.
but it was...
You're like, it would have been cute if that happened and I ran out.
100%, actually.
Oh, well, that's all good.
Ways. We have a few topics today that we would like to cover with you all.
Yes.
But both of them are along the same theme. There's a theme today. It's a thematic episode regarding white people acting a fool and not knowing their place.
Surprise.
Right. I'm like, this is a groundbreaking episode.
I know, never before heard on this show.
Never before heard of. So yeah.
You
want to start? You want to get going? Should I start first?
I know. I feel like I'm so excited. Like I'm at like I just got to Disneyland and I'm going to like go on all the rides.
And by
Let's
go all the
start.
rides, you mean like obliterate someone?
What? Obliterate?
Yeah, you're not gonna obliterate her?
Oh. I'm not a violent person. So some of y'all's faves, because for being as problematic as she is, a lot of Latinx queens love her, in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we're talking about the one, Karen Del Taco, who really showed her white feminist ass this week when she took to Instagram to complain, to rant, to victimize, to center her white woman rich self in this conversation about not being or being dismissed for talking about traumatic relationships in her music in the past. Meanwhile, people like, and she lists Doja Cat, Ariana Grande, Beyonce, Nicki, Cardi, Kehlani, who, how dare you, because Kehlani is like a precious angel gem, and like,
right.
I mean, they all, like, how dare you to all of them, but except Camila, I don't care. But, and right. Camila was on that list too, which I think she added Ari and Camila just to like, not
take
make
away
it all
from
black
her
women. Right. Even though Ariana is a white woman of color. I'm kidding. It's a joke, y'all. I know she's white. Yeah, so she went onto Instagram, and here, so there's so many layers to this because one, I won't read the whole thing. You can Google it if you want to read because it's pretty lengthy. But there's just, and the funny thing about this is like, it's a text image that she used as a post, and she used like that Courier New like typewriter font.
Not Courier New, bitch. You know she wrote a dissertation when she hit me with the Arial bold, and I knew it was gonna be something crazy.
Like, this bitch is like thinking that she is like typing at a typewriter with a candle and like ink feather pen right. And like being some kind of like really prolific, I don't know, tortured
Edgar
artist
Allan
or whatever.
Poe,
yeah, like what the fuck, girl? She starts the post by saying "question for the culture," which is already like instantly we're like, hold on,
who are you?
Which culture? To? Who are you talking to, and who is this directed at? Because I think it's pretty clear, right?
Right.
So she gets into this whole discussion. Like I said, I won't read it. I'll just read the quick first part where she says, now that she lists all the girls have had #1 hits or songs about being sexy, wearing no clothes, fucking, cheating, etc., can I please go back to singing about being embodied, feeling beautiful by being in love, even if the relationship is not perfect, or dancing for money, or whatever I want, without being crucified or saying that I'm glamorizing abuse? 6 question marks. She goes on.
I think you need to add the part where after she says glamorizing abuse, I'm a glamorous person.
Oh, hold on. You're right. She says, I'm fed up with female writers. Also, she said female, which is like, do you hate yourself, girl?
She does.
And I'm fed up with female writers and alternative singers saying that I glamorize abuse when in reality, I'm just a glamorous person singing about the realities of what we are all now seeing are very prevalent emotionally abusive relationships all over the world. Anyway.
Like, wow, so profound.
Right.
She's like, abuse exists, okay?
She also says later down in that section where she says, let's see. Let this be clear. I'm not a feminist, but there has to be a place in feminism for women who look and act like me. You're right, Lana. There are no rich white women in the music industry who look and
I'm like, didn't y'all grandmas burn their bras? Like, that was for you, Lana. That was for you.
And she says, the kind of women who says no, but men hear yes. The kind of women who are slated mercilessly for being their authentic, delicate selves. The kind of women who get their own stories and voices taken away from them by stronger women or by men who hate women.
And so those are the same, right?
Right. And also stronger women is so loaded, especially given the context that she's listing predominantly Black women artists in that first line of this ridiculous, tired
manifesto.
She like saw the vagina monologues and got inspired to say something apparently, because good Lord, what kind of like clusterfuck of white feminism is this?
I mean, that is like the grand wizard, like saltine cracker of like white feminism, though. Like you are really sitting there crying because you're so mediocre and you're so weak just in general, right? Like not necessarily like in any context, but just so weak that the only way that you can get any sort of like place in relevancy is to tear down women of color in hopes that somebody will pity you. Ma'am, that is so like, I don't even know. Like, I'm like, it's annoying. Like, you're just coming out doing the same shit that we see being done to Black women every single day on such a platform, so irresponsibly, and really not even having any self-reflection to know that, like, just because you see yourself as a delicate flower, like what?
Also,
like,
no one is coming for you. No one has told you anything.
No one even talks about you. Like, you are the small print on the Coachella flyer.
No, but also, like, your fans are, like, basic-ass white gays. Like, what are you? I don't understand. Like, I will say, when her first album came out, I was kind of into the Born to Die album, and she did Red, and I was like, okay, this is, like, some really, like, sad white girl shit, but it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I was never like a stan, but like, and you would hear stuff because she was like rich and she, you know, was using the chola attire and like her videos and the aesthetic and
which
like,
that's weird to me. Like, let's talk about that for a second, because I feel like she hates herself so much, or she has lost herself so much, or maybe there's nothing to find. But I feel like she started off doing that, and for some reason or another, the Latinx, you know, community welcomed her in a way that almost like legitimized what she was doing. And maybe the bitch just got a little too comfortable and now is like emboldened to say shit like this because she got so many passes. Like, isn't her name like Fitzgerald Grant or something?
Elizabeth Grant. Okay, you've been watching a lot of Scandal. But her name is Lizzie Grant, like, before we go any further. What was that thing you said you saw that you loved?
Yeah, they called her, they were like the Chicana. First of all, her Chicana cosplay stage name is as imaginative as a side character on Law & Order SVU, bitch. That took me out. Okay.
I will say this, Black Twitter, as always, amazing and coming through with the reads. I was sending them to you because I just saw a bunch that people were posting, and I think someone said like she hasn't the same amount of cultural depth as like a warm can of LaCroix.
Yes, bitch, a warm can
and
of
I hate warm LaCroix.
I know, but if you're hungover,
oh girl, it revives you sometimes.
No.
So go ahead.
And while yes, it's annoying, and yes, we can talk a lot of shit, I think what we both want to do is kind of acknowledge the danger that this has when like white folks, especially, you know, white women with such a huge platform, say things so irresponsibly and in a way that's so strategic where nobody that's digging any deeper than the surface can pinpoint that they're, you know, violently racist comments, but it still positions her as a victim and almost vilifies like Black women who are successful just because they're more successful than her. And
Definitely.
People are consuming that shit.
Right. And I think, you know, obviously it's fun to talk shit because it's like this celebrity who has a big, you know, and she's Lana Del Rey and the jokes just kind of write themselves because she's so like gimmicky
she's
in her
fucking
image.
Clown. Yeah.
Right. That there's so much room. But what I want to say is that, like, to what you're saying, this can be the Karen that you work with in your office. This could be your roommate. This could be your next door neighbor. And it doesn't have to be, you know, them talking about Beyonce, which also, how dare you? But like, you know, talking about your other Latina neighbor or your other Black neighbor or whoever it is, or how they talk about people of color in your actual neighborhoods or communities or in your workplace. Like, that ideology transcends, you know, Karen Del Taco to like your average white girl next door.
Absolutely. Because what we don't see as like the part after something like this happens in your workplace, in your classroom, and so on and so forth, is that Black women are constantly being asked to take a back seat, even almost dull their shine or their greatness for the ego and the mediocrity of white women.
And the preservation of that, like...
Right. Because then at some point, somebody's standard is going to have to heighten when you're coming to play with some bunk ass music, and Beyonce just did a full Coachella special after birthing 2 little baby humans and snatched as fuck, okay, vegan as fuck, like I'm sorry,
precision
who are
as
you?
Fuck. Like,
Precision
just
as fuck. 400 outfit changes, nail polish changes, bitch. Like Destiny's Child
vocals,
Revival, Solange, like a whole band.
movement.
I don't understand why we're even like talking to you right now. Like that Nicki Minaj line, like he wins, you lose.
I want Nicki to bring Roman back for this bitch and like drag her. Like, why don't they all?
I'm waiting for Cardi to say some shit.
I'm surprised she hasn't.
This can be the unification of Nicki and Cardi. We love uniting against the same enemy.
Yeah, this is what we're.
Oh my god, that's the theme.
Honestly, give us a collab between those girls, minus Camila, because she can go home. No one's asking for her to show up.
Camila Cabello.
Yeah. I'm like, she's also kind of like, whatever, girl. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of, so I wanted to also mention, there was an article that I found, or I came across online by Sharonda Brown through the Black Youth Project. They have really great articles all the time that are like media critiques and pop culture critiques. So when stuff like this happens, they just like give it to you in such a way where you're so brilliantly and effectively, and it's like amazing writing. But anyway, Sharonda Brown has this article from 2017 about this kind of interaction precisely that we're talking about. She writes about the kind of like Instagram drama that was happening, I guess, between Rihanna and Kylie Jenner when Fenty Beauty came out and her competition with Jenner's whatever she does. The same as when Maria Sharapova had a lot of negative and like villainous things to say about Serena Williams, because Serena Williams has beat her ass so many times.
I would even say like it's almost exactly what Lana Del Rey is doing, what that bitch did, but I feel like what she did in her memoir was a lot more of dehumanizing Serena than Lana is. Because Lana's more playing the victim about herself, but this bitch over here was literally using words to describe Serena in a way that was not a little less than human. And I'm like, where are you going with that, girl?
Despite the fact that Serena is physically smaller than Maria Sharapova.
Yes.
That's wild. That is how racism works.
That's how whiteness works, baby.
So, yeah. So, and I think the difference here too, or the other layer to it maybe here, is that what she's saying, what Lana Del Rey is saying about these other artists is like essentially slut shaming them. And like, also these are very like classist ideas, right? You think of like the fact that Cardi was a former dancer and like all these other things, and Doja, and all of these women for the most part built a lot of their following around like this very empowered sexuality. Like all of them talk about their sexuality very openly in their work and publicly.
It's just kind of crazy how like each one of the women that you listed are women that so many women and femme folks pull strength from, or pull like courage or self-love from. And nobody is pulling up a chair to sit down and have a conversation about Lana. And somehow now she's making what they're doing a negative thing. Like, who's ever felt inspired and like loving themselves? Like Lana literally cried about like selling her life to like an older man. And like, that's just the vibe. Like, get high and cry about a fuck up mistake that you made to Lana Del Rey while everybody else is bringing the kids to school.
Meanwhile, these women constantly are attacked in the media and on social media for doing what they do best, right? I mean, when Beyonce did Formation and had the entire like Blue Lives Matter
Super Bowl
against her. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then, Nicki constantly being, her like criticized because of her sexuality or her body, or in Cardi and her for her mouth and for how they talk and how they what they say and how disrespectful they are. So I think you're right that this is exactly an example of that idea of white women hating so passionately when Black women are winning in any dimension, any kind of field, any kind of politics, music, art, like activism, whatever you want to call.
Because also, who is checking for Lana's opinion on these women? Like, who is asking for how she feels about these women? Like, I feel like whiteness emboldens folks so much to step into an arena that is not theirs to step into and have these strong opinions and irresponsible quotes that are so damaging for absolutely nothing. You're not being called upon. You know, no one's coming for you. You just plop in and stir shit up and then play the victim.
And there was layers to that too, because she calls out Ariana, even though they did the Charlie's Angels soundtrack last year with her and Miley, who Miley is just as like overtly sexual or whatever in her work.
Or more.
And was not mentioned at all on that list. You know what I mean? So it's like, who is this anger and this frustration really directed at when there's so many other like white artists? You know what I mean? Who like do all this kind of crazy shit. I mean, even like thinking about people like Katy Perry and like Lady Gaga.
Why didn't she get called out?
Right. So I don't know. I do know, right? It's like she's saying it's not racist, but that's the other part I was gonna say. So then, obviously Twitter comes for her, has brilliant analyses all over the internet if you just quickly search it. She responds by posting a response, which is not an apology. It is just like a part 2 to her.
Which is wild to me.
And she says a few things. One, she mentions this idea that there's a new third wave of feminism coming. Stay tuned. Who's leading it?
Her?
Well, she just was, I forgot what the post says, but she was saying like, she's talking about, girl, first of all, take a gender studies class, take an LGBT studies class, take an ethnic studies
read
class. Read a book. Like, watch a documentary, educate yourself.
Listen to a podcast.
Hey, listen to us.
I'll listen to our podcast.
Stupid ass. No, she just, no, her, not you. But she.
No, either way, it would have been
funny. And so that is so offensive because we know this, and probably our audiences know this because they probably read and listen to what we do and other shows. But third wave feminism has been a thing, long time. Women of color at the forefront of that, and still pushing the conversation forward into like more radical thinking about feminism and how race and class are inextricably linked, which is why a reminder that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
100%.
2, like your entitlement and pettiness and just is showing. And 3, like this is the danger, like you're saying about having that platform and then people still going to like defend her. And I've been seeing people, because I was looking at the Instagram earlier, like sending you love, like you're so strong, like blah, blah, blah. And it's all these like Karen and Becky's from whatever, and Skylar's, the gays from WeHo, who I'm just like, I'm had it. Because then she says, the last thing, which I'll stop with the story here, is that she mentions that some people are trying to put her into a race war based off what she was saying.
Why are white people talking about race wars so much this month?
It's because they're obsessed with it. And I think they want one so they can win. And she says, so whether you're hyper Trump and Pence fans or hyper liberals.
What does that even mean?
I know, exactly. And she's just saying, this is like, she says, thank you for that. People are saying that I'm trying to start drama, but like, I know like something about she's a strong, beautiful, and like these are just things associated with enemy. She goes off and it's all these things. You should read them because they're pretty wild.
I didn't want to finish it.
Yeah, well, that's the last thing she gets to is like the race stuff and how she's like just being so dismissive about any kind of racial accusation, and then says like, "Oh yeah, I consulted with Ariana and Doja," and it's just like a big can of stinky ass, like rotten. Corn in the can that like she is. Like I just cannot.
I just don't understand. Like it literally sounds like a little privileged bitch that is in high school that doesn't realize like the extent of like what is happening when she does this, and is like, you guys think I'm starting drama? I just like wanted to talk about how I felt. Like bitch,
exactly
what?
That. Exactly
bitch,
that.
What?
And that she's older than a lot of these girls too. Like
maybe that's another layer.
Ugh.
She's tired and she has nothing to show for it.
And
she's
then
tired and she doesn't know why.
And I just want to contextualize that too by saying like there are sad white girl artists who I do fuck with and have been writing about their own kind of, I think of like Fiona Apple and Alanis Morissette and Tori Amos. And like,
what's that one white girl that I love? Sarah something.
Sarah McLachlan.
No.
Sarah Bareilles.
Yes.
She's like, but see, she comes after, like there was a whole wave of even that with like the Michelle Branches and the Vanessa Carltons. And
but that are also aware of where they need to stay and what lane.
In their white girl target lane. Like,
and also are there when you need them. Okay, when you're driving alone, maybe in traffic, maybe had a verbal altercation on the phone. Like Sarah.
If you're going through a breakup.
Maybe, but I know that I will not write you a love song, and Sarah taught me that,
While you drink your overpriced latte.
Right. They made it wrong.
What a hard life. So, that's kind of it. I think this continues a conversation of last time when I mentioned like white women are trying to say like Karen and Susan and Becky are like racist slurs towards white women. And I'm like, this is just Karening at its peak, I think, because what these, like we're saying, this is about white women fragility, white women victimhood. And I think only goes to remind us that Karen is not a racist or a sexist term, because women will use their gender oppression to circumvent their over entitlement with whiteness to like be racist towards women of color and be violent towards women of color.
Right. And you can't co-opt intersectionality, baby. So being queer doesn't make you not racist. Like being a woman doesn't make you not racist. Like it doesn't matter if you are a woman or not. Karen, Becky, Susan, Kathy, you can still be who you are, Any Hoosiers.
Any Hoozlebees, right? That I'm done with her. And even if I was never even really with her in the first place, but she really showed her ass. And
if she wears the Virgen de Guadalupe one more time, I'm snatching her wig.
I'm like, I'm going to call Gwen Stefani to come beat your ass.
We want to see that white on white crime, okay?
I know. There's only one white woman who can dress like a chola.
She's like, I'm the only safe appropriator. Get out.
She's like, I'm from Anaheim.
Right.
What a mess all of that is. Anyway, so that's the latest with that tomfoolery. There's more tomfoolery, though, that Yaz is going to tell us about.
So the world is melting around us or whatever, and we're looking ahead to a presidential election in November. Everybody that's worth having a conversation about dropped out because the Democratic National Committee is garbage and pushes out anybody that is not stale and pasty. So we have Joe Biden as our Democratic nominee or whatever. I, for one, think he's a terrible, terrible candidate. I, for one, think his politics are terrible. But I also understand that we are now in the shithole rock and hard place where if we don't vote for him, then we have Trump. So we are now in the position of like, who is the lesser of two evils? Does that mean I'm like riding for Joe? No. And I also don't think it's fair that like everybody else on this side of the lane now is like villainized if we critique him in any way because we're pulling votes away from him or whatever.
Right.
Not my problem that you're mediocre. So his latest blunder was on an interview. His staff thought it was a good idea for him to be interviewed by Charlamagne tha God.
Already.
As most political or as most presidential candidates had been, right, throughout the initial primaries, except for Joe. And so Joe is there, they're having a conversation, he's answering questions, but somebody was like, we're going to have to cut the interview short. And so Charlamagne was like, well, come on back because there's still a few questions that I think our listeners would want to hear about. Like, just as every other presidential candidate, like it's essentially saying just because you're not Trump doesn't mean that we automatically have to be 100% behind you. We still want to know who you are and like what you stand for.
Right.
A fair question, okay, as an interview, you're running for the president of the United States. This man, the son of the man who beat up some tough guy named Corn Pop at a pool somewhere, okay? This man turns to look at this black man and tells him to his face, if you vote for Donald Trump, you're not black. Sir, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Hold up. Wait a minute.
I was upset, obviously, but I also feel like, so, okay, you know Wanda Sykes?
Mm-hmm.
So Wanda Sykes came out and said Joe Biden feels comfortable around the black community. And so speaking like that was something that came out naturally because he's the Bill Clinton, if you will, the first black president, if you will, right?
Whew. Right.
So I think we're now in a position where we have to critique this and we have to unpack this and understand why it's not okay for a white man to walk into a black space and tell anybody who can be black or who cannot be black. One, do I think if you vote for Donald Trump, you're stupid? Absolutely. Does it make you not black? No.
Right.
Because there's this assumption that like you have to be a certain way depending on like what your ethnic or racial makeup is, right? Politically inclined in terms of political inclination. I just feel like that's problematic in itself because white people always get to choose, right? Always get to choose like their political inclination. They get to kind of like pick and choose where they're going to stand on that day. Black folks, brown folks don't really have that liberty because once they do, then they're seen as like ridiculous. Do I agree with that? Yes. But a white person can't tell you that. Like there's a dynamic there. Do I believe that if you're a Jessica Martinez that you are a dumb person? Absolutely. But do I need a white man to tell me that? No.
Right. And also, like, lest we all forget, which America has a very affinity towards, but let's not we forget that white women overwhelmingly voted for Trump last time. And black folks had the least number of votes for him.
Right.
Like, even more so, like, than Latinos, who there was plenty of Latinos who voted for Trump. So it's like, let's pause.
Black women actually brought it, like, more centered than any other group.
So that's why it's not just offensive, it's like dangerous, right?
And it's also incorrect.
And it's dangerous because it's incorrect. Like,
right.
Because those are just, and it's dangerous because then you have this become a soundbite from like white Democrats who are like justifying it or condoning it.
On one hand, yeah. And on the other hand, it's a soundbite against conservatives to try to bring black folks over to the other side. And that's working. They literally, if you go to Trump's website, he's selling shirts that say, if you don't vote for Trump, you're not black. Or if you vote for Trump, you're not black, Biden. And he's selling it. Like, this was like, you are so dumb, sir. Like, what were you thinking? And also, I think, like, it's sickening to know his history in terms of policy as a senator and his votes as a senator that affected disproportionately the black community. And to now sit there in a black space to tell them, like, well, who else are you going to vote for?
Right.
And it's so tiring to have to constantly hear that he rides the coattails of having been the vice president in the Obama administration as sufficient to being okay with the black community. But if you had not had that, sir, what is your history looking like?
It's similar. I think it's also building up what we were just talking about with the Karen Del Taco thing, because it's just like white people feeling so entitled and correct in like dictating what is blackness, what is appropriate blackness, what is whiteness, what is appropriate whiteness. How do all of these things also have conversations to do with like citizenship and who's belonging and whose vote matters and who's, you know what I mean? Like who's engaged in like the body pop. So it's, I hope that like if you're listening to this, it's like two sides of the same coin, and that this, again, like we're talking about presidential candidates here, but this is the mentality and the thinking that is dangerous, that we also see so much in Latinx communities, by people who are anti-Black, who use a lot of the same rhetoric, right? Like, and use the same kind of mentality, because I almost feel like that is something to weaponize to give to Latinx people, the whole like you're not Black thing. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, you suffer so much and you still don't know what's good for you. Like, essentially is what he's saying. You know what I mean? And it's also saying like, I know better. And like, you're kind of continuing to screw yourself if you don't vote for me.
Yeah. And not even knowing that like, we're probably still screwing ourselves if we vote for you anyway.
Right.
So
there's no winning in that one. Yeah.
Obviously, I don't condone voting for Trump or voting for anybody that's not. But also, like, Joe Biden is a shitty candidate with shitty politics and a shitty history. And unfortunately, like, we just got served a big pile of shit and there's nothing else to eat.
And they're telling us that to eat it because it's candy. You know, it's like, just because you put a bow on a piece of shit doesn't make it stop being a piece of shit. Like,
stop making it smell. Like, I feel like what we have to do as Democrats, and I hate our party for so many reasons, but I feel like you have to acknowledge that he's a trash candidate. Because I feel like that is the secret to getting everybody that was on the Warren train or on the Bernie train or on any other train to be like, okay, fine. Like, you know that we're not getting the best of the best, but all this like spoon feeding fake ass bullshit to us in hopes that we just start becoming Bernie-crats to Joe Biden in the way that we wrote for Bernie is never going to happen. You're not the same candidate. Your purpose for being a president is not the same.
Right.
We don't trust you, my guy. Like, we actually see you as Trump, but with a blue tie on.
Right. Because we forget all the like inappropriate touching of the young women and girls that there is video footage of several occasions over the years when he was vice president.
It's disgusting. Like, and I think this kind of, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that was it.
No, I think this kind of brings us to like another conversation too, that when we talk about the Democratic Party, like we have two parties within our party. Like we have the progressives and then we have the Joe Bidens and the Amy Klobuchars and like the Kamala Harrises of the world, you know? Like it is very separate. So I feel like we are not vibing. Like the reason why Trump is going to get elected in November is because we're not united as a party, because our party is not the same party.
Right. If
that makes sense. Like when I say a Democrat, what you're describing as a Joe Biden is not my politics. So we're not technically Democrats. Like we have to be called something else.
Right.
And that's why we're always going to have someone like Trump win, because we're not acknowledging that.
Right. And it's also because those more conservative Democrats are the gatekeepers and still dictating, right? Like even what the left is supposed to like look like and sound like, to supposedly, you know, get Trump out of office or whatever. It's
or to believe that there's progress or something. But my last note on that is that I'm hearing and seeing all the outrage for Trump supporters that are talking about how dare Joe Biden say something so violently racist. Like how dare he comes in and just talks about Black people like that. And all
of a sudden they're like experts on racial analyses.
I was like waiting for one of them to hashtag Black Lives Matter in the conversation.
God. That's like some real dystopic shit.
It is. And remember that one Fullius, Paul Ramirez, that was coming for me all crazy?
Yes, I do.
He commented on that little person's what's his name? One of the council members' son's Facebook or whatever. And he was like, I can't believe this. Like, this is disgusting. Like, blah, 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 just saying all kinds of shit. So I like commented on it just so that I could pop up on his thread. But I'm like, this is like the most cognitive distant, like the cognitive dissonance of the thread is alarming. And like, of course, none of them touched it with a 10-foot pole. But like, this is what is resulting of this.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show that white people, it's not that they don't understand when we talk about like racial equality and dynamics, right? It's they choose to hear what they want and twist the words to hear what they want. Because if they can do like what you're saying, this cognitive dissonance of then support, like being outraged by those Biden comments. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing like with Blue Lives Matter. Like Blue Lives Matter means that you understand what Black Lives Matter is doing and you are trying to subvert it, right? With this extremist kind of like white supremacist project, which is Blue Lives Matter.
Right.
And it gets, you know, it gets distributed and disseminated as like support for law enforcement, as support for as nationalism, as like citizenship, right. As like nationhood, as like all of these, you know, patriotism, whatever you want to call it, which is very seductive to most people and to the average American or the average white person.
The average white American.
And to some people of color too, I will say.
Well, I think it's to anybody that doesn't feel like they're at risk.
Right. Even as untrue as that might be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, those are, you know, prime examples that despite a pandemic, white people are continuing to be white people. Surprise. Mm-hmm. No shocking news there. But I think they do like, which I think is what we try to do here, but is also like they do create examples or like case studies, if you will, to make the point of understanding like how does white supremacy work? Well, let's take these examples of these two things that happened in pop culture this week and really think like this is not just famous people saying stupid shit or like, you know, right. Getting some stuff off their chest or misspeaking or whatever. It's like these are all examples of the insidiousness of how white supremacy like operates and tries to bamboozle people into thinking that it's not somehow not racism.
100%.
And that's the scary part.
Yeah. And also like, I think I did post this yesterday. It's like, I don't remember a time where two white men ran against each other that were non-problematic for the presidential state of the United States.
You're like where?
I need folks to like get over being alarmed that they're hearing this from these candidates and start like moving towards understanding where it's the root of it and how we can potentially maybe in 20 years from now have a different situation. Because I feel like this alarmist TMZ style news that we get all the time is very like, Joe Biden said this. I'm like, oh, I can't believe he said that. Talk shit about him. And then you forget that there's a long history of like white supremacy that is connected to this. Right. So that when Black folks come out and share with us why things are fucked up and how best to move forward, we're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Joe Biden just has dementia. Like, bitch, no. Like, this is where you need to, like, pin it, okay? And keep it there. Don't let it fade away so that we can actually start moving in a progressively forward way, because this shit is not going away if we continue to consume it that way.
It reeks of a dumpster fire that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But yeah, happy times, good times. You know, we're still here. We are alive and breathing. No, yeah, but it's just, I hope that you take this, if you're listening, and like, you know, be outraged, be angry if that's what you feel. But then think about where you want to take that, like, outrage. What do you want to do with it? How is it gonna, where are you going to put it in your life to work through it so it's not also holding you hostage? You know what I mean? Because this stuff is not going to stop. But I want you to think of it rather than like, oh no, this will never stop. It may never stop, but we're also all collectively, when we have these conversations and do this work, are getting sharper and are getting more like fine-tuned. And it makes it a lot easier for them to disseminate the tools to marginalized people. I'm like, what are some steps, right? Like, how are we moving this forward? Because it's funny to laugh at the dragging of these people and the memes that come out of everything. And of course, like, that's necessary. And it's so, you know, relief. Sometimes we need relief from all the chaos. That shouldn't stop there. That can't be where the conversation ends. And I know it's hard because we're in a pandemic, but I think these are just things to think about, right? And also to ask yourself, because I think, and I want to be honest for myself, is like, these things are not things that I knew always, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like I've read a lot, I've had discussions with people, I've, you know, tried to learn as much and listen to Black folks, listen to what Black women and trans women and femmes are saying. Because I think like that work is hard, but it's also so necessary, right? Listening to our podcast can't be it for you. I'm sorry. And I say that with love,
right.
You know what I mean?
No,
like,
yeah.
This can't be 100%. Where the journey ends for you. I hope it's not.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else, Yaz? We're reaching the end of the show today. This is a good one. I feel really good about this.
Oh my God, we're like really good. So good.
I hope you know that when we say shit like that, we are 100% kidding.
You know what? Modesty is for mouses. Or for mice, right. Okay?
Modest mouse.
I'm all modest. Oh, Modest Yahoo! Do you remember?
Oh wow! Yes, I do. You had the album.
Okay, first of all, I'm not a fucking what are they called? Zionist or whatever. But I enjoyed a good what was he?
I don't remember.
He was a rabbi, right?
I don't know, girl. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But he had that one song, "The King Without a Crown," right?
Yeah, which again, like I'm very troubled by the amount of Zionist music that I listened to growing up, like POD and
they were Zionists.
They were like crazy Christians.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. I forgot about that. That was again totally your jam.
When I was like 10.
And like we weren't even in middle school yet. I don't think.
I know. Wow, I would listen to Lenny Kravitz and then have like an analysis of it.
Lenny Kravitz.
And then I would be like, let's talk about Bank Robber Man.
That's a good song. He has a lot of good music, actually. Anyway.
He was like my first crush.
Oh, why didn't you mention him last time?
Because I don't know how I feel about him now, but back then I was like, he's fine as heck.
But him and Lisa Bonet gifted us with Zoe Kravitz, who I love. So shout out to her.
Thank you.
All right. Well, as always, you can listen on Spotify, on Apple Music, podcast, on SoundCloud. We're on YouTube. These videos are there if you want to see
They live forever.
Right. If you've ever wondered what we look like when we're doing this, this is a very weird perspective, but you get to watch it. Yaz, why don't you take us out?
As we always say, love yourself, love your life.
And remember, you know more than you think you know.
Bye.